Welcome back to Crime Documentary Files. Today we delve into a chilling true crime story from Taiwan. It is a haunting tale of love, deception, and greed that transformed a once happy family into a tragedy. At the heart of this story lies a beautiful love affair between Lin Dechang and Guo Fumei. Both hailing from Taitung, Fumei belonged to a prominent family in Taichung, a fact that added weight to their connection. After her graduation from Hualien Normal School, Fumei began her teaching career at an elementary school in Taichung. It was here that she encountered Dechang, a substitute teacher whose personality mirrored her own. Their chemistry was undeniable, and love blossomed quickly. Before long, they made the momentous decision to marry. In a bid to reassure Fumei's family about their daughter's future, Dechang signed an unconventional prenuptial agreement. In this agreement, he vowed that Fumei would never have to lift a finger for household chores. This promise was Dechang's way of earning the trust of her family. Their marriage appeared idyllic. Dechang not only cherished Fumei, but also made the bold choice to leave teaching and embark on his own business venture. As they welcomed 6 children into their lives, the family made a move from Taichung to Kaohsiung. Eventually, they returned to Taichung to further expand their business, settling in the bustling Nangang district. As the 1980s rolled in, Taiwan enjoyed an economic boom that significantly heightened people's aspirations. Seizing this moment, Lin Dechang, formerly a coach driver, ventured into entrepreneurship, establishing multiple tourist car companies to capitalize on the growing demand. But he did not stop there. With friends, he delved into the transportation industry, and his business flourished, leading to tremendous financial success. For a family of 8, this success translated into a life of comfort. Yet tragedy loomed on the horizon for Fumi. A childhood accident, a fall from a swing, inflicted lasting damage, culminating in a brain injury that formed a blood clot. This condition progressively compressed her optic nerve, robbing her of her sight within a decade and forcing her to abandon her teaching career. From that point onward, Fumei dedicated herself to raising their children. Known for her strictness, she was balanced by Dechang's loving presence, who became the hero in their children's eyes. Even after exhausting business meetings, he often found time to do laundry on the balcony. Beyond household tasks, he meticulously managed every aspect of family life, from signing school correspondence to distributing allowances to the children. But the tranquility of this affluent family was shattered with the arrival of a new woman. In early 1984, Lin Zhuoxian, their eldest son, returned home from school to a scene that struck him as odd: a table laid with an array of hot, home-cooked dishes. This was unusual, as the family had relied on takeout meals since his mother's blindness and his father's relentless work schedule. It had been ages since he had seen such a lavish dinner spread. Assuming they had hired a maid, Zhuoxian eagerly sat down to eat. However, after a few bites, he noticed something amiss in his mother's demeanor. Looking up, he was taken aback by the sight of a strange young woman emerging from the kitchen. Even more perplexing was the way this woman addressed his mother as sister, with an unsettling familiarity. Despite her blindness, Fumei attempted to maintain her composure, gently urging everyone to eat first. Yet, after the meal, Zhuoxian peered through the crack of his parents' bedroom door to discover his mother sitting alone, her head bowed, tears streaming down her face in silent despair. Even at a young age, his heart was heavy with the realization that something profoundly wrong was unfolding within their family. This young woman, Li Uweigui, was a mere 18 years younger than Dechang and had been recruited as an accountant for his burgeoning company. However, their relationship was far from a simple workplace romance. It was a meticulously orchestrated scheme. With his head bowed and tears streaming down his face, the young boy felt the weight of despair. Despite his tender age, he grasped the gravity of the turmoil engulfing his family. This boy, known as Lin Zhuoxian, was acutely aware that something profoundly wrong was unfolding around him. Li Uweigui, 18 years Lin Dechang's junior, was an accountant who had been recruited to work in his company. Their relationship transcended mere affection. It was a meticulously calculated plan that unfolded with disturbing precision. Li Uweigui exploited Lin Fumei's vulnerabilities, gradually infiltrating the family dynamics. As she observed Fumei, resigned and unable to resist due to her blindness, Uweigui saw an opportunity to weave herself deeper into their lives. Lin Dechang's audacity grew with every passing day. His children, still too young to comprehend the depths of betrayal, bore silent witness to their father's increasing indiscretions. He boldly brought Li Uweigui into their home, and with that, his behavior spiraled into open defiance. Initially, the large family's dynamics forced Lin Fumei to accept the situation, albeit begrudgingly. However, Linda Chang's hesitance to frequently bring Uwegi home faded. He began renting a small apartment, a secret escape for his affair, but as time went on, his presence within the family dwindled. He transitioned from late nights at home to weeks of absence, with no one signing the children's school books anymore. The financial support that once flowed steadily was now a trickle. In a desperate bid to salvage her marriage, Lin Fumei made the painful decision to relinquish her bedroom to Li Uwegui, hoping it would coax Linda Chang home more often. But as she stepped aside, Uwegui wasted no time in assuming her place. In the shadows of the household, Li Uwegui, now firmly established as the new mistress, took control of the domestic realm. The suffocating atmosphere became unbearable for Lin Zhuoxian, who could no longer witness his mother's silent suffering without feeling compelled to act. The audacity of the mistress living under the same roof disturbed Lin Zhuoxian deeply. Summoning every ounce of courage, he confronted his father. Yet, instead of acknowledging his misdeeds, Linda Chang responded with anger, dismissing his son's concerns. In a moment that would change everything, Linda Chang's cruel taunt pierced through the tense silence. "If you're so capable, stop using my money." His words drove 15-year-old Lin Zhuoxian to a heartbreaking decision, with nothing but his identification in hand. In despair, Lin Zhuoxian took what little allowance he had and made the agonizing choice to drop out of school, leaving home behind. He wandered the streets of Songshan, living as a homeless teenager. After weeks of hardship, when hunger gnawed at him relentlessly, he managed to find work as a newspaper delivery boy through a labor agency. He drifted from job to job until he finally secured a position as a grocery store clerk. However, his early departure from school led him down a dark path, entangling him with a local gang. On his days off, he immersed himself in their street fights. A particularly brutal brawl landed the group in a police station, where officers uncovered his dropout status and alerted his school principal. Fortunately, with the patient guidance of a compassionate teacher, Lin Zhuoxian agreed to return to school and reclaim his education, bringing his months of street life to a close. Yet when he stepped back into his family home, he was met with an overwhelming void, a stark reminder of all that had changed. After countless days of searching, Lin Zhuoxian stumbled upon his family's new residence, an illegal structure nestled next to a beef noodle shop. The sight was pitiful. The walls were paper-thin, and the ceiling loomed low, amplifying the sense of despair that surrounded them. In their new reality, they were forced to endure a life devoid of basic comforts, even lacking proper bathroom facilities. When Guo Fumei opened the door to welcome her son home, there was an eerie silence. She uttered not a single word of reproach regarding his departure. This silence shattered Lin Zhuo's heart, bringing him to his knees before her in a flood of tears. Yet, amidst his sorrow, troubling questions gnawed at him. How had their family descended into such dire poverty, and where were his father and two sisters? The grim reality began to unfold soon after his departure. Linda Chang's business had spiraled into a financial crisis, triggered by a treacherous partner who absconded with company funds. This betrayal sent their enterprises crashing down like a line of dominoes. Faced with insurmountable debts, De Chang chose the coward's route. He vanished into the night. Taking Li Uweigui and their two daughters to Kaohsiung, he abandoned his blind wife and 3 remaining children to confront the relentless creditors alone. Guo Fumei found herself in a desperate plight, blind and now responsible for 3 young children. Her own family, once wealthy, had fallen into hard times shortly after her marriage and could offer no assistance. Although the creditors eventually relented, the weight of rent and daily expenses bore down heavily upon them. Yet, through the generosity of neighbors, church support, and the part-time work of her eldest daughter and son, the family managed to scrape by in their makeshift home. Lin Zhuoxian's return injected a glimmer of hope into the family's dire circumstances. Not only did he resume his education, but he also took on part-time work to support them. With his application for social assistance approved, they were able to relocate to public housing. The apartment, though modest at 890 square feet, came with an astonishingly low rent of just $8 per month. At long last, they had access to essential facilities for bathing and cooking. Despite their ongoing hardships, the children, living with their blind mother Guo Fumei, found a sense of contentment. They missed their father and 2 sisters dearly, but held on to the belief that life was finally improving. Then, a fateful day arrived, December 10th, 1984. Linda Chang, who had been missing for 6 long months, unexpectedly resurfaced in Taipei, searching for Fumei. He expressed a strong desire to return to their hometown of Taichung, claiming he wished to visit both sets of parents and, hopefully, borrow money from her relatives. Fumei, harboring the hope that her husband had finally come home like a lost bird returning to its nest, was filled with joy. Eager to leave with him, she quickly packed her bags. The children were ecstatic, believing their father's apparent reformation would make for the perfect birthday gift for their mother, whose special day was fast approaching. As Lin Joy prepared for his upcoming graduation trip, the other children excitedly plotted a surprise birthday party for their mother during their parents' absence. However, fate had something entirely different in store. The next news regarding their mother would not bear the sweetness of reunion, but rather the bitter sting of unimaginable tragedy. On his graduation trip, Joy had planned to meet his parents when his group reached Taichung. However, from the moment they departed Hualien, his calls went unanswered. Although concern gnawed at him, he had no choice but to continue the journey with his classmates. Then, on the afternoon of December 21st, as the group paused at a restaurant in Kaohsiung, a front desk clerk approached him with a note. It read, "Your mother has passed away. Please come to the morgue at Kaohsiung Left-Wing Naval Hospital." Without the luxury of time to question who had delivered the devastating message, Joy rushed to the hospital, where he was met by the sight of his father and siblings gathered in sorrow. Their faces were streaked with tears. The children, frantic with confusion, bombarded their father with questions about their mother's death. But Da Cheng's response was cold and detached. "Your mother was scalded by hot water. She died from an infection." He even attempted to prevent the children from seeing their mother one last time, but their insistence led them to lift the white sheet, revealing a horrific sight. Their mother's body was covered in severe burns, except for her head, which bore the marks of a painful demise. Beyond their immediate shock, a torrent of questions flooded their minds. How could a simple trip home culminate in such a horrific death? The grim reality was that Dechang's return had been a cunning trap. Not only had he planned to exploit Fumei to borrow money from relatives, but he had also orchestrated a deadly meeting between her and Liu Weigui. When Fumei arrived in Taichung, Weigui was already waiting, threatening and coercing Fumei. Weigui demanded that Fumei not only borrow 200,000 new Taiwan dollars, approximately $7,000 from her aunt, but also that she renounce her position as Dechang's legal wife and divorce him. Naturally, Fumei could not acquiesce to such outrageous demands. On the morning of December 16th, around 11 a.m., while staying with Dechang and Weigui in Taichung, Fumei prepared to take a bath. As Weigui readied the hot water, her pent-up rage exploded. Seizing the opportunity presented by Fumei's blindness, she unleashed a torrent of boiling water upon her. Unable to see and thus unable to escape, Fumei was completely at Uwegi's mercy. Fumei could only scream in agony, pleading with Uweigui to stop. Yet Uweigui, fueled by a fierce, almost possessed rage, showed no mercy. It was only when Fumei collapsed from her horrifying burns that Uweigui finally ceased her assault and called an ambulance, as Taiping Hospital lacked a burn unit. Fume was rushed to the Naval Hospital in Kaohsiung, where she received prompt medical attention. However, the extent of her burns was catastrophic. She succumbed to her injuries on the afternoon of December 21st. Her passing was attributed to sepsis and kidney failure. The brutality of the murder ignited outrage within Fumei's family and her 6 children. In a stroke of fortune, Fumei's cousin, Li Yonggren, a lawyer, stepped forward to seek justice. Without hesitation, he began assembling evidence to prosecute Liu Weigui. Yet in a shocking betrayal, Lin Dechang, Fum's husband, aligned himself with Weigui. He not only funded her legal defense, but also allowed her to fabricate a story in court. She falsely claimed that Fum had accidentally scalded herself while bathing and that Weigui had broken the bathroom window in a desperate attempt to save her. However, Lin's eldest daughter provided crucial testimony, stating that her mother had always showered and never bathed. Moreover, attorneys pointed out that a mere 10 inches of water in a bathtub could not have caused the severe burns covering 90% of Fum's body. Despite the glaring inconsistencies, the lack of witness testimony and direct evidence led to Weigui receiving only a 7.5-year sentence for manslaughter in the initial trial, a life traded for a mere 7 years behind bars. This was a devastating outcome for Fum's family. Yet, their despair deepened when Weigui's appeal coincided with Taiwan's special amnesty period, resulting in her sentence being dramatically reduced to just 3 years. With this unexpected turn of fortune and Dechang's unwavering support, Weigui served only 1 year and 10 months before being released from prison. In a shocking twist, Dechang remained loyal to her, and they resumed cohabiting post-release, facing both the fallout of their father's betrayal and the grief of losing their maternal grandparents. While other relatives withdrew, the 6 siblings found themselves alone, shouldering the burden of their mother's funeral arrangements. Tragically, they were duped by a deceitful funeral director who swindled their meager savings. In the end, they could not afford a proper coffin and were forced to settle for a simple cremation. In the days that followed, Da Chang continued to evade creditors and remained elusive. Even if he were found, he had no means to provide for his 6 children. To escape homelessness and fearing retaliation from the recently released Uvaegui, the siblings sought refuge in St. Path Children's Home. Situated in the Tianmu district, Lin Zhuoxian and Lin Zhuoi excelled academically, gaining acceptance into prestigious public schools in Taipei. Yet they opted to attend Hualien Teachers College, their mother's alma mater, which offered free tuition and guaranteed employment upon graduation. During this period, Da Chang maintained sporadic contact with his 2 sons. As their school was located near Taotung, he would invite them to stay with him in Uegui for a few days. However, sharing a home with their mother's murderer filled the brothers with dread. Each night, they lay awake, haunted by the fear that Uegui might burst into their room to harm them. This terror gradually led to a decline in their visits with their father. Throughout their time at Hualien Teachers College, the brothers remained silent about their traumatic past. Their classmates, noticing their Tianmu address, an area of affluence, assumed they hailed from wealth. They observed Zhuoxian's odd habit of taking multiple showers each day, misinterpreting it as a quirk of privilege, oblivious to the fact that he was using the sound of running water to drown out his silent sobs. Then, in December 1988, a shocking headline seized the brothers' attention. Woman throws baby from moving train after fight with boyfriend. As they read the details, disbelief set in. They discovered that the perpetrator was Uegui, their mother's killer. After ending Fume's life, Uegui had anticipated becoming Da Chang's legal wife. Yet despite having borne his child, she remained without the official status she desperately sought. This unfulfilled desire led to frequent heated arguments between them. On the evening of December 26th, after drinking heavily, an intoxicated Uegui boarded a train at Taotung Station. In a moment of desperation, she found herself aboard a speeding train, her 1-year-old son in tow. Intent on reaching her parents' home in the north, her simmering anger and resentment spiraled into a horrifying act. As the train hurtled forward, she swung open the window and, in a chilling moment, threw her baby out into the abyss. Perhaps it was the sudden clarity that followed her reckless decision that compelled her to act. Realizing the gravity of her actions, she disembarked at Louis Station and, trembling, turned herself over to the police. But by that time, 2 agonizing hours had slipped away since she had cast her child from the train. After a frantic search, it was at 2 a.m. when rescue teams finally discovered the tiny body, miraculously shielded by tall grass. The grass had prevented the child from tumbling down a steep slope near the tunnel exit. Yet, nearly 4 hours had passed since the tragic incident. The cruel impact, coupled with the frigid December night air, hovered at a biting 50 degrees Fahrenheit, compounded by the delayed medical response, leaving the child with irreversible brain damage and moderate intellectual disability. Though Uegui faced prosecution for her actions, she narrowly escaped severe punishment, benefiting from her voluntary confession and the fact that her child had survived. Shortly thereafter, she was released, and in 1991, she fulfilled her long-held wish by marrying Dashing. Meanwhile, both brothers graduated from Teachers College, secured teaching positions, and established their lives in Taipei. All 6 siblings eventually married, choosing to sever ties with their father entirely. They buried their painful memories deep within, clinging to the hope that time would heal their wounds. The scars ran so deep that they never spoke of their past, not even to their spouses or children. Then, on July 17, 2003, as Zhuo Xian returned home from work with his wife and child, they were met with a shocking sight at their doorstep. An elderly man in a wheelchair, hunched over and covered only by a thin blanket. His frail body bore wounds, both old and fresh, including a large gash on his head, while the floor of the wheelchair was soiled with human waste. The sweltering summer heat intensified the unbearable stench of excrement, urine, and sweat. Zhu Xian's 4-year-old daughter burst into tears, overwhelmed by fear. He quickly ushered his family inside, his heart racing as he instantly recognized the man in the wheelchair, his long estranged father. After ensuring his wife and child were safely upstairs, Zhuo Xian wasted no time in calling his brother Zhuoi and summoning an ambulance. Inside the ambulance, the brothers sat beside their father, their minds racing with questions. Despite years of unthinkable actions, they had always held an image of their father as a towering, heroic figure. Now they were left pondering how he had found their address and how long he had sat there in silence. Finally, All their questions coalesced into a singular, haunting inquiry. Did she beat you? Their father's response was a barely audible yes, a whisper of the pain he had endured. At the hospital, doctors tended to his head wound, but Dashing's condition was dire. The severe blows to his head had triggered a stroke, necessitating an extended hospital stay. Zhuo Xian and Zui took on the burden of medical expenses, seeking a protection order for their father. They even found a suitable nursing home to care for him. Despite their father's betrayal of their mother, they felt compelled to fulfill their filial duties one final time. Yet, Dashing showed no gratitude for their forgiveness and care. Then, one day during a visit to the nursing home, the brothers were met with an empty bed. The staff informed them that Dashing had packed his belongings and left 2 days prior, perhaps believing he had recovered or, more likely, feeling the pull to return to Uegi. The brothers, hurt by their father's abrupt departure without a word of goodbye after their sincere efforts, decided to cease their search for him. All they could do was pray he would find solace somewhere. Life settled back into a normal rhythm for a year. Then, on Saturday, November 13th, 2004, as Zhuo Qian prepared to leave for a school anniversary celebration, a jarring phone call shattered the peaceful morning, reopening old wounds. His wife answered the first call, but, suspecting it to be from scammers, hung up angrily. When the phone rang again, a sense of dread washed over them, hinting at the turmoil that lay ahead. For a year, life settled into a semblance of normalcy. But on Saturday, November 13th, 2004, as Lin Zhuoxian prepared to leave for a school anniversary celebration, the past would soon come crashing back. But then, a jarring phone call shattered the calm of that morning, reopening old wounds. His wife answered the first call, her anger flaring as she hung up, convinced it was just another scam. However, when the phone rang again, the tension in the air thickened. In a shocking turn of events, Zhuo Xian received a phone call that shattered his world. The voice on the other end delivered the devastating news. His father had died. They requested his presence at the Asia Eastern Hospital morgue. After confirming various details, Zhuo Xian realized this was no prank. It was a legitimate emergency. From the Haishan police station, panic set in as Zhuo Xian rushed to the hospital to identify the body. Meanwhile, his brother, Lin Zhui, remained at the station to manage the necessary paperwork. The weight of dread hung over Zhuo Xian as he arrived at the hospital. As he reached for the white sheet to take one final look at his father, the morgue staff attempted to stop him. A chilling familiarity enveloped him, echoing the day he lost his mother years prior. Ignoring their warnings, he lifted the sheet, compelled by an unbearable need to see the truth. The sight that met his eyes was horrific. His father's head was marred with open wounds, and his body lay grotesquely drained of blood. It was a vision so disturbing that it would haunt Zhuo Xian for the rest of his life. The truth began to unravel following Daxiang's marriage to Wei Yi. The life she had envisioned, filled with wealth and happiness, had evaporated into a bitter reality. Since Daxiang's business collapse in 1984, he had struggled to regain stability, and the shadows of their past loomed large. Frequent arguments erupted between the couple over financial woes. Their once promising future now faded into conflict. In April 2004, desperation drove Wei Yi to theft at a hotel, a crime that landed her a 2-year, 7-month prison sentence. However, she escaped, becoming a fugitive from the law. On the fateful night of October 13, 2004, at 1:50 a.m., Daxiang confronted Wei Yi about her reckless spending of their dwindling savings. Wei Yi, battling alcoholism, was heavily intoxicated. In a fit of rage, she hurled an ashtray at him, then escalated the violence, striking his head with an electric rice cooker. Daxiang, weakened by life's burdens, could not defend himself against her brutal assault. But Wei Yi's fury did not end there. She seized a medicinal wine bottle, her screams of "die" echoing through the night as she continued to strike him until he lay unconscious. Their son, trapped in a paralyzing fear or hindered by his mental condition, could only watch as his mother unleashed her wrath. It wasn't until she collapsed in her rattan chair and Daxiang lay barely alive that he dared to flee downstairs to seek help. Using a public phone, he called the police. Tragically, by the time Daxiang reached the hospital, it was already too late. Medical professionals discovered multiple head wounds, a fractured skull, and extensive internal bleeding. The cause of death was determined to be excessive blood loss, exacerbated by the delay in receiving medical attention. When police arrived at the chaotic scene, they were met with the remnants of violence: a shattered rice cooker, bloodied stairs, and Wei Yi snoring obliviously in her chair. Her blood alcohol level was alarmingly high at 0.77 milligrams per milliliter, and her clothes were stained with the evidence of her crime. Taken directly to the police station, Weigi began to weave a web of excuses, desperately trying to deflect blame. Initially, she claimed that Daxiang had wished to end his own life due to chronic gout pain, a statement so ludicrous that even she struggled to maintain her composure. However, as she sobered, her narrative shifted dramatically. Weigi turned on their mentally disabled son, accusing him of provoking Daxiang, even bringing her own mother to corroborate her twisted claims. Yet, after thorough police investigations and reenactments of the crime scene alongside their son, the truth became undeniable. Overwhelming evidence pointed to Weigi as the murderer. She eventually confessed to killing Daxiang with the rice cooker, but denied using the wine bottle or shouting, "Die," during the horrific attack. This woman had taken 2 lives and had previously thrown her own child from a moving train. Facing the death penalty, she was instead granted a reduced sentence of 14 years, with a mandatory 3 years of psychiatric treatment upon release, due to her history of mental issues. The verdict sparked outrage among both society and the Sheng family. However, fate dealt another cruel hand. While awaiting her next court appearance in detention, Weigi succumbed to illness. The final verdict ultimately became irrelevant. The tragedy of one woman's destructive choices had left 2 families shattered, culminating in the death of its perpetrator. Daxiang and Weigi's 6 children continued to navigate life, painfully grappling with the legacy of their mother's actions long after her passing. The verdict, delivered in the courtroom, incited outrage, reverberating through society and deeply angering the Sheng family. Yet, while awaiting her next court appearance in detention, Li Uweigui succumbed to illness. The final verdict now held little significance. The tragedy of one woman's actions had irrevocably shattered 2 families, culminating in the death of its architect. The 6 children of Linda Chang and Li Uweigui were left to navigate life under the oppressive shadow of their mother's choices, struggling to cope with the pain of her absence. The siblings crafted their own lives, yet they were haunted by the brutal murder of their father, a tragedy that struck them again, 2 decades later. But the nightmare did not end there. In the wake of their father's death, Zhuo Xian, the eldest son, faced widespread media scrutiny. His seemingly cold reaction to his father's demise sparked harsh criticism, as many suggested that his emotional distance had contributed to the tragedy and questioned his suitability as a teacher. Once a promising candidate for principal, Zhuo Xian's trajectory was abruptly altered by the incident, halting his training for the prestigious position. Anonymous letters flooded both the school and their home, taunting him. 20 years separated the deaths of both parents, and the same ruthless hand was responsible, leaving Zhuo Xian to grapple with society's misunderstanding. His professional life crumbled under the weight of this tragedy. In moments of despair, he considered ending it all, but a flicker of hope urged him to share his family's harrowing story with the media and the world. Over the years, compassion began to bloom as society started to rally around him. His sisters, too, refused to allow the shadows of their past to shackle their futures. Each carved out successful paths in their chosen fields. Their poignant story was transformed into a film titled We Six, produced by Daiwai Television. It stands as a powerful testament to the bonds of brotherhood and the unwavering resolve to rise above suffering, embodied by the 6 siblings. The narrative teaches us that happiness is not dictated by fate, but crafted through our own choices. This tragedy serves as a profound reminder of the destructive nature of greed and betrayal, while simultaneously celebrating the extraordinary resilience of the human spirit. This case underscores the steadfastness of children who have triumphed over adversity to forge a brighter future. They exemplify that, regardless of the pain of the past, individuals can overcome and pen new hopeful chapters in their lives. This is the heart of today's narrative. What are your thoughts on this case? We invite you to share your insights in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on more intriguing cases. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in our upcoming episodes.